How much understability is too much understability? Well, we're about to find out, because we're testing about 20 understable distance drivers to find out which one is the most understable. Hey everyone, it's Greg from Six Sided Discs, and this is Flight Numbers Don't Matter, where we test and compare as many discs as we can to find out just how accurate their flight numbers really are. A portion of today's video is sponsored by Idio Sports. More about them in just a little bit. To understand why understable distance drivers are so important, I have to talk a little bit about my own disc golf journey. You see, when I first got into the sport, like most players, I was able to improve fairly quickly because, of course, I was very bad. As I made adjustments, I saw distance and accuracy improve quickly, but it wasn't long before my progress slowed, plateaued, and maybe over the last year or so, even started to go backwards. As I've been super busy making these YouTube videos and traveling with our mobile pop-up shops to actually get out and play. And what that means for me is that discs like my Mint Discs Freetail or my Discmania Astronaut are no longer reliably understable. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only person slowly getting worse at disc golf. So there's probably someone else out there that wants to know what are really the most understable drivers. And that's what we're going to find out today. We've also had great feedback from all of you watching that you want to see players of different skill levels throwing the discs. So in addition to Caleb throwing these today, I'll be throwing some later in the video so we can actually see if they're understable for an average player like me. We'll also be assigning a rating to these discs, and we're basically going to decide whether their flight numbers don't matter, meaning they're completely wrong, almost matter, meaning they were only slightly off, or do matter, meaning they are spot on. Let's kick things off with the Innova Vulcan. The Vulcan is rated at 13.5, -4.2, and is a sharp-edged, wide-rim driver. And frankly, the Vulcan is the perfect place to start, because this is what you want from an understable distance driver. A smooth flip to flat, easy turn, but decent distance. However, all may not be exactly as it seems, because we have another Star Vulcan. And this Star Vulcan was really overstable. It seems Vulcans may vary quite a bit from run to run. So for the Vulcan, the flight numbers don't matter. Let's move on to the Discmania Active Premium Astronaut. The Astronaut is part of Discmania's active line, produced by Yikun Discs in China, and is rated at 12.6, -4.1, and should be a solidly understable disc. And I should know, because this is mine. In fact, I have proof of how well it used to fly, from when I first got it in a mystery box battle a couple of years ago. And as you can see, it has a wonderfully smooth turn. And how did it fly for Caleb? Well, still plenty understable. But for me, it's not reliably understable anymore. So while the flight numbers do matter for the Astronaut, it wasn't the most understable disc that we tested. Next up is the Discraft Nuke SS in Z plastic. We've tested a lot of Discraft discs, and one thing we're fairly confident about is Z plastic generally being more overstable than its flight numbers say, especially for beginner to intermediate players. And that is true of the Nuke SS in Z plastic. While the Nuke SS has some turn, it is definitely not quite a -3 for us. So its flight numbers almost matter, and we'll move on to a pair of shoes. Yep, you heard me right, a pair of shoes, because this portion of today's video is sponsored by Idio Sports. When you're throwing a shot, you need to be focused on just one thing, that shot. Unfortunately for me, after tearing a ligament in my ankle over a decade ago and having surgery to fix it a couple of years back, I spend most of my pre-shot routine, as well as most of my run-up, worrying about how I'm going to plant my foot. And after purchasing a pair of Idio Syncrasies for myself over the holidays, I'm slowly starting to see that worry go away. Obviously, you can slip and fall with any pair of shoes, but knowing that I'm using the only shoes that are purpose-built for disc golf is a huge confidence boost for me personally. The Syncrasy features omnidirectional grips, giving you the confidence to approach forehands and backhands on any surface. The Syncrasy is waterproof, has extra toe protection for those toe draggers out there, something I'm guilty of myself, and specialized pivot zones. The pivot zones are in perfect positions for you to comfortably throw on hyzer, flat or Anheuser with ease. This is the first pair of shoes that I've ever bought online without trying them on first in a store. I used the sizing guide on their website and got the perfect size for me on the first try. But worry not, if you don't get it on the first try, they have a 15-day return and exchange policy to make sure that you get the size that's right for you. Idio Sports is actively working on having continuous in-stock inventory for the 2023 season, so no more pre-order wait times in your future. The 2023 Syncrasy is available in 3 different colors: Bird Hunter, Heritage, and my personal favorite, because I love black shoes, Smoke. You can also support some of your favorite pros with the 2023 Nate Sexton Limited Edition colorway or the Paige Pierce Shattered Skyline, which is expected to be available January 21st. You can learn more about the Idio Syncrasy at the link in the video description, and make sure that you use code 6sided discs, that's 6sided discs spelled out, for free shipping on your order. I cannot recommend the Syncrasy highly enough. I bought it with my own money, tried it, liked it, and then reached out to them to sponsor our channel. Huge thanks to Idio Sports once again. They support disc golf, so make sure that you support them. Now let's get back to the understable discs, and I can throw some with my new shoes on. Ask any Innova fan what the best understable distance driver is, and they'll probably all respond, the Mamba. The Mamba is one of only 2 discs we're testing today rated with a -5 turn, which means it should be one of the most understable. Well, for Caleb, absolutely. On every throw, the Mamba had effortless, easy turn for Caleb. And not even just that, but huge distance as well. But what about for me? Well, I'm pleased to report that it was understable for me as well. So the flight numbers definitely do matter for the Mamba. But let's compare this to a disc that didn't fly the same for Caleb and I, the Alfa Disc's Atlantis. Now, firstly, I want to point out when I ordered the Atlantis, it was listed as a distance driver, but now it says it's a control driver, so maybe some of the numbers got updated after I initially ordered it. But it is rated at 9 speed, 6 glide, -4 turn, and 1 fade, which means it's the only disc under a 10 speed we're looking at today. And let's watch Caleb and I throw it side by side. And the Atlantis is all turn for Caleb, no question. But for me, only a slight turn before fading back. Now, I'm not necessarily upset about that flight path, but when you consider the disc is rated -4 turn, I'd like to think it would be more understable for me. So the flight numbers almost matter for the Atlantis. But let's move on to our next disc, the Infinite Discs Maya. Now, the Maya looks and feels a lot like the Mamba, but as we know from past experience testing Innova-made discs, the run and the plastic can have a huge impact on the disc stability. Rated at 11.5, -3.1, we're testing a Halo S-Blend version. Innova's Halo plastic is typically more overstable than their other blends, so I wasn't at all surprised when this Maya actually had some low-speed fade. But honestly, if we watch that flight again and look at the flight numbers of -3 turn and 1 fade, they look spot on to me. So the flight numbers do matter for the Maya. But this is one of the things that got me thinking more about flight numbers. If that's what -3.1 looks like to me, what does -2.2 look like? Well, we have 4 different discs, 12 or 13 speed, with -2 turn and 2 fade, with the Discmania Majesty, the Innova Shryke, the Innova Tern, and the Lone Star Bayonet. Now, I'm not necessarily looking to directly compare all these discs to each other. That's not necessarily useful when going from manufacturer to manufacturer. However, what I want to know is, how do each of these manufacturers approach their flight numbers? What does -2.2 mean to them? And let's get things started with the Majesty. Rated at 13.5, -2.2, it's another disc from Discmania's active line. It's the fastest disc in the active line, and by far the least beginner friendly, because for me, it was crazy overstable. And before you think this is one of those situations where I just needed a little more power and it would fly great for Caleb, the Majesty was also crazy overstable for Caleb. So I'm gonna have to say the flight numbers don't matter for the Majesty, but how does it compare with another -2.2 disc? Well, with nearly the exact same flight numbers, let's take a look at the Innova Shryke. The Shryke is rated at 13.6 -22, and we're going to test two of them, one in Champion Glow plastic and one in Star plastic. And compared to the Majesty, there's a significant difference. Both Shrykes had some decent turn before they faded out, something we didn't see at all with the Majesty. And I think this is a little bit more what I expect -22 to look like. At least the disc is moving in both directions, rather than just holding a line and just fading out. So the Shryke's flight numbers matter. I think they're just about right. But what about another disc from Innova? Let's see that Glow Tern in action. Now the Tern we're testing is in Champion Glow plastic, and as you can see, it's stamped 12.6 -22. And this gives us a great opportunity to compare one -22 disc from Innova to another. Though I should point out the Tern looks a little bit more like the Mamba than the Shryke. However, watching them side by side, they couldn't be more different. The Shryke has just that slight turn before fading out, while the Tern holds true to its name and turns. Perhaps one clue though why the Tern is so understable can be found on Innova's website, because in every other plastic other than Champion Glow, the Tern looks to be rated at -3 turn instead of -2. And after seeing this flight, that makes a lot more sense. So at least in Champion Glow plastic, I don't think the Tern's flight numbers matter so much. On to our last -22 disc, this time from Lone Star with the Bayonet. Rated at 13.5 -22, our Bayonet today is in Bravo plastic, a slightly softer premium plastic. And considering the Bayonet was Emerson Keith's go-to distance driver last year, you can probably already predict that it wasn't very understable at all. In fact, it was by far the most overstable disc we tested, full stop. I certainly wouldn't rate it at -22. Its flight numbers definitely don't matter. It's more like a 0.3, at least for us. So -22 seems to mean very different things to different manufacturers. Let's move on then to a couple discs you're probably less familiar with, beginning with the Yikun Wei. As we've mentioned many times, Yikun manufactures the active line for Discmania, which means there's always a little game of which Discmania disc is this when we check out a new disc from Yikun. The flight numbers of 10.5 -2.52 puts the Wei pretty darn close to Discmania's 11-speed Mentor, but they are definitely different molds. And given the poor track record of Discmania's active line so far in this video and in other videos we've done, I have no idea how this is going to fly. So let's take a look. Caleb gives it a rip on plenty of hyzer, as he's been doing with most of these discs, and the Wei flips up and gets a nice, long, smooth turn. And honestly, that's a pretty nice flight. I like it a lot. But as far as flight numbers go, while I can see the -2.5 turn, I don't see 2 fade in there. So the Wei's flight numbers almost matter, but that's it. Now on to a disc we've never thrown from a manufacturer I know nothing about. It's the Dream from Wing It Disc Golf. Wing It Disc Golf is a new company started by two brothers in Utah. At least that's what I was able to learn after some quick research. They only produce 3 discs. The Dream was their second ever mold. And boy, is it understable. Rated at 13.5 -41, its flight numbers very much do matter, as the Dream had plenty of turn every single time we threw it. Next, a disc with exactly the same flight numbers, the Doomsday Pestilence. Our Pestilence is in their glow plastic called Radioactive Waste, and in addition to having a very similar set of flight numbers, it kind of looks the same as the Dream as well. And unsurprisingly, it flew almost exactly the same as the Dream. Another disc for the flight numbers do matter tier, but there's even more understable discs to be found. So let's take a look at the DGA Sail. The Sail is the other -5 turn disc that we have today alongside the Mamba. And I have a particular bone to pick with the Sail. You see, when my wife Emily started to get into disc golf, she of course relied on my recommendations for discs that might actually fly well for her. And she is very much influenced by brand. She loves Discraft and pretty swirly discs. So I was able to convince her to take a chance on this swirly purple Sail because Discraft makes it for DGA. And it's supposed to be really understable. But as Caleb's going to show us, if it only turns this much for him, imagine how much it doesn't turn for a beginner. So the DGA Sail's flight numbers don't matter as far as I'm concerned, and
That's it.
That's all I have to say about that.
Let's quickly move on to another disc from Lone Star, the aptly named Tumbleweed. Sometimes a disc name just makes sense, and it fits perfectly. The idea of a super understable disc being named after something that rolls is fantastic. Comment below what other discs really hit the nail on the head with their names. I'm thinking Magnet, Cloudbreaker. Share your thoughts. Anyways, for the Tumbleweed to really live up to its name, it needs to be super understable and ideally easy to roll. So, is it understable? You betcha. Can it roll? Once again, yes. The Tumbleweed is the real deal. The flight numbers matter, and let's make a quick trip from Texas to Finland for the Prodiscus Fasti. The Fasti, I have to say, has some of the most unique flight numbers around. While most discs that are rated with a lot of turn usually aren't rated with much fade, the Fasti claims to have -3 turn and 4 fade. And honestly, looking at this disc, I'm very suspicious of where this fade is going to come from. But I always try to stay open-minded and not judge a disc before we throw it. But in this case, we were right. I don't know where that 4 fade is hiding. I don't see anything on the disc that's going to create that fade. So just go ahead and assume that those flight numbers don't matter, and let's move it right along to the Viking disc's Berserker. This Domi 10 speed is rated at 5 glide, -3 turn, and 2 fade. Viking Discs makes one of the discs that inspired this Flight Numbers Don't Matter series, the Odin, which, with the same flight numbers as the Destroyer, flew in the exact opposite direction. So how will our Berserker fare? Well, the Berserker's flight numbers almost matter because it has all sorts of turn. But once again, I'm not seeing that low speed fade. I think in the case of the Berserker, as well as the Wei from Yikun, we just didn't see them maybe at a lower arm speed or saw them high enough in the air to catch that low speed fade on camera. Just 4 discs remain, and all of them are rated with -4 turn, so I have high hopes that we'll find our most understable distance driver in just a moment. First up for the home stretch is my very pretty Mint Discs Freetail. And yes, this is my Freetail I mentioned earlier in the video. Now, like I said, for me, it hasn't been reliably understable in a long time, but can it fly anywhere near 10.5 -4.1 for Caleb? Absolutely. If you've got reliable power, the Freetail will be a reliably understable disc, but I don't. So its flight numbers do matter, but it's still not the most understable disc that we threw. So what about our last entry from Lone Star Discs, the 12-speed Harrier? Rated at 12.6 -4.1 on their website, but 12.6 -3.2 on the disc, it's a very aerodynamic, domey, high-speed driver. So which flight numbers are correct? Well, why don't you decide for yourself? Here we can see the Harrier easily flipping over, catching edge, and rolling right over the hill, pushing about 400 feet with ease. Which of the flight numbers would you pick? I think I'm leaning toward -4.1 for Caleb. I will say, of the discs we tested, it wasn't the fastest to turn, but once it started, it never stopped, which might make it great for big controlled rollers. But as always, beware, because with these faster discs, you can often see a big difference from one arm speed to another. So let's see how it flew for me. Now, I'll admit I got it slightly nose up, but it still gets a big turn, as you can see, and it is getting some actual low speed fade, which is a stark contrast to Caleb's shot. Overall, though, I'd say the Harrier's flight numbers do matter, and it is definitely one of the most understable discs that we tested. Now for our next to last disc, the Prodigy D6. Now, I will say everything that we've tested so far has been within 4 grams of max weight. That's 175 grams, while this Prodigy D6 in air plastic is 162. Now, from our weight video earlier in this series, we know that lighter discs are likely going to leave the hand a little bit faster, but they are also going to be more easily affected by the wind. But I'm quite confident in saying that this disc would still be crazy understable, because this is what happened when we threw it today. For Caleb, it was a huge roller, turning over super quickly, but interestingly, it held its angle on the ground very nicely. For me, I threw it nose up, high, and still got a roller. That once again pushed straight before curling up. And I firmly believe even if you add another 10 grams to that disc, it's still going to be super understable. So if you're looking for a long distance roller or just a reliably understable disc, the D6 from Prodigy is a perfectly reasonable choice. But somehow, some way, that was still not the most understable distance driver we found, because that spot was reserved for the Divergent Discs Basilisk, rated at 12, 6, -4. I mean, just look at it. Do I even need to tell you how ridiculously understable this is going to be? It's like 90% dome. And in this springy max grip plastic, it feels crazy. So without further ado, here is the most understable distance driver we found.
No, baby. Oh no.
Bye.
Yikes.
Sweet. Yeah, throw however you want and then try and get out of the way because it's going to go to the right. There it goes. Look at that thing go. It's out of frame. Whoa. So there you have it. The Divergent Discs Basilisk was by far the most understable distance driver that we could find. Its flight numbers probably only almost matter because honestly, it's deserving of a -5 or a -6 turn, as far as we're concerned. So which of these discs would I try bagging for myself? Well, I think I'm going to start with the Innova Mamba. I think it had the most usable understability. Obviously it's understable, there's plenty of it, but it's not just like crashing out super crazy understable, so it might be a little more workable if I add more angle to it. If that doesn't work out, I'm probably going to be heading to Lone Star, which is not something I expected to say. The Tumbleweed was nice and consistently unreliable, and I do like the smaller rim. I'm not a huge fan of like 12 and 13 speed discs. They just don't feel comfortable for my backhand. And maybe the backup to that would be the Harrier. It is a little bit bigger. It's not as comfortable, but it was super understable. So I think there's still some potential there that it could work for me. And to be completely honest, I don't want to need either of these discs, maybe at least until I'm in my 50s and my elbow's all ruined or something like that. So hopefully I can hold them off and stick with some of these other options for the time being. And this whole understable distance driver journey was a wild ride, so I hope you enjoyed it. Huge thanks again to Idio Sports for sponsoring today's video. Make sure you check out the link in the video description and use the code 6sided-discs to get free shipping on your order. And before you go, comment below what you throw for your most understable distance driver, and let us know what else we should test in the future for our Flight Numbers Don't Matter series. For 6sided Discs, I'm Greg. We'll see you in the next one. We've encountered this in other videos with some... I bit my tongue. Ow. However, all may aim here, especially for beginners or but as Caleb's gonna show us, but they are definitely, that's all I have to say about that. And let's make a quick trip from Texas all the way to Finland. No, let's not do that. So which of these discs would I... Oh boy. And before you go, comment below what... Oh boy.
Are you kidding
Oh
me?
my gosh. Wait, though, it could do something. So just wait.
Where's that 4 fade at?
Just wait.
You gotta wait on that 4 fade. This way is. Okay. That was on my thing. I don't know. I can't do that one. That happened yesterday too. Same exact thing.
Still going.
I think it sticks to my index.
These are. If you like this content and want to see more. Blah, 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 blah. If you like this content and want to see more, please consider liking the video, subscribing to our channel, or supporting us on Patreon. Your support makes this content possible.